Dead letters. Flash forwards to the basement, September 1943. A 40-year-old girl is writing into a small dark covered book. She is bony but strong and has seen many things. Papa sits with the accordion at his feet. He says, "You know, Lizelle, I nearly wrote you a reply and signed your mother's name." He scratched his leg. He scratched his leg where the plaster used to be. But I couldn't. I couldn't bring myself. Several times through the remainder of January and the entirety of February, when Lizelle searched the letterbox for a reply to her letter, it clearly broke her foster father's heart. "I'm sorry," he would tell her. "Not today, huh?" In hindsight, she saw that the whole exercise had been pointless. Had her mother been in a position to do so, she would have already made contact with the foster care people or directly with the girl or the Hubermans, but there has been nothing. To lend insult to injury, in mid-February, Lizelle was given a letter from another ironing customer. The Pfaffelhervers from Hyde Street. The pair of them stood with great tallness in the doorway, giving her a melancholic regard. "For your mamma," the man said, handing her the envelope. "Tell her we're sorry. Tell her we're sorry." That was not a good night in the Huberman residence. Even when Lizelle retreated to the basement to write her 5th letter to her mother, all but one of them yet to be sent, she could hear Rosa swearing and carrying on about those Pfaffelherver Ascholsche. Oh, that's a swear word. What can I say? And that Lucy Ernst Vogel. Not a swear word. She heard her call out. Tradition, they could all... He just translated it into English, swear words. Lizelle wrote, "When her mother came around, there was no gift. There was no gift because there was no money, and at the time Papa was out of tobacco. I told you." Mama pointed a finger at him. "I told you not to give her both books at Christmas, but no. Did you listen? Of course not." "I know." He turned quietly to the girl. "I'm sorry, Lizelle. We just can't afford it." Lizelle didn't mind. She didn't whinge or moan, fall or stamp her feet. She simply swallowed the disappointment and decided on one calculated risk, a present from herself. She would gather all of the accrued letters to her mother, stuff them into one envelope, and she would use just a tiny portion of the washing and ironing money to mail it. Then, of course, she would take the batchen, most likely in the kitchen, and she would not make a sound. 3 days later, the plan came to fruition. Some of it's missing. Mama counted the money a 4th time, with Lysel over at the stove. It was warm there, and it cooked the first flow of her blood. What happened, Lysel? She lied. They must have given me less than usual. Did you count it? She broke. I spent it, Mama. Rosa came closer. This was not a good sign. She was very close to the wooden spoons. You what? Before she could answer, the wooden spoon came down on Lysel Memminger's body like a gale of God, like the gate. Body like the gate of God. Red marks like footprints, and they burnt from the floor. When it was over, the girl actually looked up and explained. There was no pulse and yellow light altogether. Her eyes blinked. I mailed my letters. What came to her then was the dustiness of the floor, the feeling that her clothes were more next to her than on her, and sudden realization that this would all be for nothing, that her mother would never write back, and she would never see her again. The reality of this gave her a second reaction. It stung her, and it did not stop for many minutes. Above her, Rosa appeared to be smudged, but she soon clarified as her cardboard face loomed closer. Dejected, she stood there in all her plumpness, holding the wooden spoon at her side like a club. She reached down and leaked a little. I'm sorry, Lysel. Lysel knew her well enough to understand that it was not from the hiding. The road marks grew larger in patches on her skin as she lay there in the dust and the dirt and the dim light. Her breathing calmed, and a stray yellow tear trickled down her face. She could feel herself against the floor, a forearm, a knee, an elbow, a cheek, calf muscle. The floor was cold, especially against her cheek, but she was unable to move. She would never see her mother again. For nearly an hour she remained spread out under the kitchen table till Papa came home and played the accordion. Only then did she sit up and start to recover. When she wrote about that night, she held no animosity towards Rosa Huberman at all, or to her mother for that matter. To her they were only victims. Of circumstance. The only thought that continually reoccurred was the yellow tear. Had it been dark, she realized that would have been black, but it was dark, she told herself. A scene with the yellow that she knew had been there. She had to struggle to visualize it. She was beaten in the dark, and she had remained there on a cold, dark kitchen floor. Even Papa's music was the colour of darkness. Even Papa's music. The strange thing was that she was vaguely comforted by the thought rather than distressed by it. The dark, the light, what was the difference? Nightmares had reinforced themselves in each as the book thief began to truly understand how things were and how they would always be. If nothing else, she could prepare herself. Perhaps that's why the Führer's birthday perhaps that's why on the Führer's birthday, when the answer to the question of her mother's suffering showed itself completely, she was able to react despite her perplexity and rage. Liesel Memminger was ready. Happy birthday, Herr Hitler. Many happy returns. Hitler's birthday, 1940. Against all hopelessness, Liesel checked the letterbox each afternoon throughout March and well into April. This was despite a Hans requested visit from the Frau Heinrich, who explained to the Hubermans that the foster care office had lost contact completely with Paula Memminger. Still the girl persisted, and as you might expect, each day when she searched the mail there was nothing. Moltke, like the rest of Germany, was in the grip of preparing for Hitler's birthday. This particular year, with the development of the war and Hitler's current victorious position, the Nazi partisans of Moltke wanted the celebration to be especially befitted. There would be a parade, marching music, singing. There would be a fire, while Liesel walked on the streets of Moltke picking up and delivering washing and ironing. Nazi Party members were accumulating fuel. A couple of times Liesel was a witness to men and women knocking on doors, asking people if they had any materials that felt should be done away with or destroyed. Papa's copy of the Moltke Express announced that there would be a celebratory fire in the town square, which would be attended by all local Hitler Youth divisions. It would commemorate not only the Führer's birthday, but the victory over his enemies and over the restraints that had held Germany back since the end of the First World War. Any materials, it requested, for such times: newspapers, posters, books, flags, and any found propaganda of our enemies should be brought forward to the Nazi Party office on Munich Street. Even Schiller Street, the road of yellow stars, which was still awaiting its renovation, was... My cat's making snoring noises. To find something, anything to burn in the name of the Führer's glory. It would have come as no surprise if certain members of the party had gone away and published 1,000 or so books or posters of poisonous moral matter simply to incinerate them. Everything was in place to make April 20th magnificent. It would have been a day full of burning and cheering and book thievery. Bonnie! She's fast asleep. In the Huberman household that morning, all was now typical. The beep Blank is looking out the window again. Cursed Rosa Huberman. Every day, she went on. What are you looking at this time? Oh, moaned Papa with delight. Oh, moaned Papa with delight. The flag cloaked his back from the top of the window. You should have a look at this. You should have a look at this woman I can see. She glanced over his shoulder and grinned at Lysel. I might just go and run after her. She leaves you for dead, Mama. Blank. She shook the wooden spoon at him. Papa continued looking out the window at an imaginary woman and a very real corridor of German flags. On the streets of Mulching that day, each window was decorated for the Führer. In some places, like Frau Diller's, the glass was vigorously washed, the flag pristine, and the swastika looked like a jewel on a red and white blanket. In others, the flag trundled from the ledge like washing hung out to dry, but it was there. Earlier there had been a minor calamity. The Hubermans couldn't find their flag. They'll come for us, Mama warned her husband. They'll come and take us away. We have to find it. At one point it seemed like Papa might have to go down to the basement and paint a flag on one of his drop sheets. Thankfully it turned up, buried behind the accordion in the cupboard. The infernal accordion, it was blocking my view. Mama swiveled. Lysel. The girl had the honour of pinning the flag to the window frame. Later on, Hans Jr. and Trudy came home from the afternoon eating, like they did at Christmas or Easter. Now seems like a good time to introduce them a little more comprehensively. Trudy, or Trudel, as she was often known, was only a few centimetres taller than Mama. She had cloned Rosa Huberman's unfortunate waddlesome walking style, but the rest of her was much milder. Being a live-in housemaid in a wealthy part of Munich, she was most likely bored of children, but she was already capable of at least a few smiled words in Lysel's direction. She had soft lips, a quiet voice. Hans Jr. had the eyes of his father, and the height. The silver in his eyes, however, wasn't warm like Papa's. They'd been furrowed. There was more flesh on his bones too, and had blonde prickly hair and skin like off-white paint. They came home together on the train from Munich, and it didn't take long for old tensions to rise up. A short history of Hans Huberman versus his son. In the opinion of Hans Jr., his father was part of the old decrepit Germany, one that allowed everyone else to take it for the proverbial ride, while its own people suffered. Growing up, he was aware that his father had been called the Judenmaler, the Jew painter, for painting Jewish houses. Then came an incident that I'll fully present to you soon enough. The day Hans blew it, on the verge of joining the party. Everyone knew you were supposed to paint over slurs written on a Jewish shop front. Such behaviour was bad for Germany, and it was bad for the transgressor. So have Have they let you in yet? Hans Jr. was picking up where they'd left off at Christmas. In what? Take a guess, the party. No, I think they've forgotten about me. Well, have you even tried again? You can't just sit around waiting for the new world to take it with you. You have to go out and be part of it, despite your past mistakes. Papa looked up. Mistakes? I've made many mistakes in my life, but not joining the Nazi party isn't one of them. They still have my application, you know that, but I couldn't go back to ask. That was when a great shiver arrived. It waltzed through the window with the drought. Perhaps it was the breeze of the Third Reich, gathering even greater strength, or maybe it was just Europe again, breathing. Either way, it was just Europe again breathing. Either way, it fell across them as their metallic eyes clashed like tin cans in the kitchen. You've never cared about this country, said Hans Jr. Not enough anyway. Bonnie! Papa's eyes started corroding. It did not stop Hans Jr. For some reason. He looked at the girl, with her 3 books standing upright on the table as if in conversation. Liesel was slightly mouthing the words as she read from them. And what trash is that girl reading? She should be reading Mein Kampf. Liesel looked up. Don't worry, Liesel, Papa said. Just keep reading. He doesn't know what he's saying. But Hans Jr. wasn't finished. He stepped closer and said, You're either for the Führer or against him. And I can see that you're against him. You always have been. Liesel watched Hans Jr.'s face, fixated on the thickness of his lips and the rocky lines on his bottom teeth. It's pathetic how a man can stand by and do nothing as the whole nation cleans out the garbage and makes itself great. Trudy and Mama sat silently, scaredly, as did Liesel. There was a smell of pea soup, something burning, and confrontation. They were all waiting for the next words. They came from the sun. Just 2 of them. You coward. He upturned them into Papa's face, and he promptly left the kitchen and the house. Ignoring futilely, Papa walked to the doorway and called out to his son, Coward! I'm the coward. He then rushed to the gate and ran pleadingly after him. Mama hurried to the window, ripped away the flag and opened it. She, Trudy and Liesel all crowded together, watching a further catch up to his son and grab hold of him, begging him to stop. They couldn't hear nothing, but the manner in which Hans Jr. shrugged loose was loud enough. The sight of Papa watching him walk away roared at them from up the street. Hansie, Mama finally cried out. Hansie, Mama finally cried out. Both Trudy and Liesel flinched from her voice. Come back. The boy was gone. Yes, the boy was gone, and I wish I could tell you that everything worked out for the young Hans Huberman, but it didn't. When he finished for the Himmel Street that day in the... I have dinner. Named the Führer, he would hurtle through the events of another story, each step leading tragically to Russia, to Stalingrad. Some facts about Stalingrad. In 1942 and early 43, in the city, the sky was bleached bed sheet white each morning, all day long. As I carried the souls across it, that sheet was splashed with blood until it was full and bulging to the earth. In the evening, it would be wrung out and bleached again, ready for the next dawn. And that was when the fighting was only during the day. With his son gone, Hans Huberman stood for a few moments longer. The street looked so big. When he reappeared inside, Mama fixed her gaze on him, but no words were exchanged. She didn't admonish him at all, which, as you know, was highly unusual. Perhaps she decided he was injured enough, having been labelled a coward by his only son. For a while he remained silently at the table after the eating was finished. Was he really a coward, as his son had so brutally pointed out? Certainly in the First World War he considered himself one. He attributed his survival to it. But then, is there cowardice in the acknowledgement of fear? Is there cowardice in being glad that you lived? His thoughts crisscrossed the table as he stared into it. "Papa?" Liza asked, but he did not look at her. What was he talking about? What did he mean when— "Nothing," Papa answered. He spoke quiet and calm. "Oh, nothing." To the table. "It's nothing. Forget about him, Lizel." It took perhaps a minute for him to speak again. "Shouldn't you be getting ready?" He looked at her at this time. "Don't you have a bonfire to go to?" "Yes, Papa." The book thief went and changed into her Hitler Youth uniform, and half an hour later they left, walking to the BDM headquarters. From there the children would be taken to the town square in their groups. Speeches would be made, a fire would be lit, a book would be stolen.
Hey, how are you? You alright?